So basically, with the resurgence of Battlefront 2, everybody has been talking about the possibility of coming back and possibly having a Battlefront 3. I'm kind of going to talk about why maybe more accurately this shouldn't be the case, or more accurately it's just not really what people think that it's going to be. But yeah, I'll kind of just get into that right now. Essentially, I don't think that EA really has the resources to make a good game in the sense of like what people want, but more accurately, I think the thing is like a lot of people don't realize that in a lot of scenarios how bad these EA games both start off as or are even in the modern day. Like look at Battlefield 2042, but also DICE. I think it's very easy to kind of look at what Battlefront 2 is now and take it as, well, we just want this kind of again, and maybe fixing some of like the problems, because it's like a game that came out in 2017, about 8 years ago. So of course it's gonna have problems because it's dated and stuff like that. But the reason I bring it up is it's very, like I said, it's very easy to think of what Battlefront 2 is today and for the day and modern day, 8 years after it came out, and it's very easy to forget where Battlefront 2 was when it initially came out, and even like where EA is now, and even DICE. DICE kind of has a very poor track record of releasing games that are, less than stellar, dare I say, and for a very long time, right? They're not only like bad for a little bit, they're bad for, a year or two. So it's not so much like, it's only a little bad, but it's no big deal, they fix it in a little bit. No, it takes a very long time. Specifically with Battlefront 2 here, I want to take a peek back into history where when the game first came out, everything was in the loot box system. The star cards were in the loot box system, the heroes were in the loot box system, and it was really bad, and it was dubbed pay to win. This is, unironically, if you aren't aware, where EA gets the most greedy title from. Like, most greedy company ever title, they get it from this game specifically. And they get it from when the game first came out. On top of the fact that I remember I was arguing with somebody, I was arguing with my friends, and he says, well, yeah, but they fixed it, right? So it's not a big deal, they listened to the community, they fixed it. No, that is not what happened. And if you think that's what happened, I think you're a little sorely mistaken, right? What happened was they essentially got bitched into reverting a lot of the initial things that they had decided to do. So they got bitched into the loot box, like reverting the loot box system and the star card system and making them what they are now. And what do I mean they didn't listen to the community and they got bitched? Well, they posted something on Reddit which has now been has reached the one of the most downvoted Reddit threads or comments of all time. And then that kind of turned into them finally deciding to, revert some of the microtransactions and the pay-to-win aspects and stuff like that. But it's also not that easy. They didn't just say, oh, well, this happened and people were mad and people didn't buy the game and stuff. Let's just revert it immediately. It took them a full year to get to that position and that point of deciding to do that stuff, which it's kind of another thing all on itself, where one of the things I said is I won't criticize game devs for having problems or, having stuff that, maybe we didn't want in the game, right? I do criticize them for their response, though. EA had a very poor response, and they also had a very poor response time. This is very much in line with other Battlefield games, waiting 2 to 3 years for the Battlefield game to finally get to a working place or a place that we as the consumer would want it to be. But more accurately, what a lot of people say is where it should have been when the game came out 3 years ago, right? Similarly, Battlefield 4, we're kind of talking about DICE now, which is a DICE game, is historically known as one of the better battlefields, or one of the best battlefields of all time. It wasn't like that when the game first came out. Hell, it wasn't even like that 3 to 4 years after the game first came out. When Battlefield 4 came out, it was really bad. This was like the start of the whole Battlefield poor releasing games and they just don't know what they're doing, right? That's where it starts from. It comes out and it's a mess and it's not good. And it's so bad that people will go back to Battlefield 3. And it takes them 3 years, well, 2 to 3, but more heavy on the 3. It takes them 3 years to finally get it to a position to where it was, where it is now, I should say. And by the time they actually decide to, get it to that spot, to fix it and update it and all that stuff, it's too late. They're already working on the next Battlefield game. I think what came after 4, was it Hardline or 1? Whatever one came after it was pretty much a year or two away, but when they actually decided to do that stuff. And Battlefield 4 did not gain its notoriety or recognition until that next game came out, because the next game was bad, so people were going back and playing Battlefield 4. People were playing Battlefield 3 when Battlefield 4 came out, and then what had happened was the next one came out, Battlefield 1, and people finally went back and were playing Battlefield 4 when Battlefield 1 came out, because Battlefield 1 or Battlefield Hardline released not very well either. So it's not like unique to see these games be poor. I also remember my friend saying, well, it's not really a big deal. And one of the things saying is that hopefully Battlefield gets it right this next time. And I said, yeah, at what point do you kind of just stop believing that that's going to be the case? They've showed you time and time again with the previous 5 Battlefield games that they cannot do that. That they cannot release a Battlefield game in a good working condition. Even Battlefront 2 is not good at the current moment. Maybe it'll receive some recognition in a couple of years when, the next Battlefield games comes out, but it's not gonna happen now because it's not good. Even then, I remember seeing the same stuff with Battlefield 2042, where people were saying about a year ago that current state of the game, game came out in 2021, last year was 2024, so 3 years later, was where Battlefield 2042 should have been when it launched, and then updated from there, not where it was when it launched. Battlefield has a horrible track record of doing that, and at some point you just have to recognize that that's just who Battlefield is. And it's not to say that Battlefield games are horrible. I mean, they're worth playing a little bit now. I was playing Battlefield 1 not that long ago, and hell, they're worth $2, right? They were all on sale like a couple weeks ago for $2. So my friend's like, oh, let's buy Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1. I already had all of them, but it's definitely worth that price point. But more importantly, it's definitely worth that price point and worth playing years after, by the time they've actually figured everything out and actually fixed it and moved on to the next Battlefield game. So Battlefield 4 was fun to play 5 years after it came out because it was still relatively newer. I mean, now it's kind of old and dated, but that's an argument for a different time. And, it's fun to play then because, well, you don't get the problems of it being released like it had when it was released. And you also don't have the problems that persisted for the year or two after it was released, right? That they didn't fix. So it's just like whatever. And he's like, I guess he's got this willfulness to be like, maybe the next one's different. And to be fair, maybe it is, but I just don't foresee that happening. I mean, they have a really great track record of messing shit up, and Battlefront 2 is no exception. Battlefront 2 now, great game. Battlefront 2 2017, not a good game. 2018, not a good game. 2019, not a good game. To a very, very long time for it to be what I would define as a good game. And it's hard because, like, how do you rate it then? Like I said to him, you can't dig yourself a 6-foot deep hole and then fill in the hole and pull yourself out of the hole and say, well, that's progress. It's progress, but it's not progress in the right direction. Like, if I wanted a hill and you just immediately started by digging a 10-foot hole or 6-foot hole, whatever you want to say, and then you fill in that 6-foot or 10-foot hole, I still don't have a hill. You still need to put 5 to 10 feet of dirt on top of that, right? It's not it's not hilly quite yet. We're not quite there yet. And that's kind of what these games are, is that after 2 to 3 years, you've finally filled in the hole, but you have to continue building on that, and it's too late. They're already on to the next Battlefield game or the next game in general, so they just can't do it. Battlefront 2015, which was Battlefront 1, didn't fix some of the major problems before they moved on in 2017 to Battlefront 2, right? It feels like when people were finally, kind of catching on, there was just another Battlefront game right around the corner, which kind of just begs the question and makes you fairly, well, I should say begs the question, but it makes you kind of interested in like, what's actually going on, behind the scenes? Well, what am I getting at, right? Well, you hear this all the time. Titanfall 3, bring it back, we want it. Battlefront 3, we want it. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 3, we want it. But in reality, like deep down, it's not going to be the game that you want it to be. But more importantly, it's just not going to be a good game, right? So I think we've seen DICE, and we've proved that DICE cannot bring out a good game on release. But they can definitely have a good game years later, right? So yeah, Battlefront 2 is fun to play 8 years after it came out in 2017. So what about, what would Battlefront 3 be and leave us in store? Well, it would be the same thing. Battlefront 2 basically killed itself upon launch and release, and, well, Battlefront 2 or Battlefront 3 would not really be an exception, where it essentially kills itself upon release for a year or two while they try to sort out the problems that they put in the game somehow. I think EA, DICE, all those companies that are like kind of under EA kind of subsidiaries have a masterclass in just how to royally mess up a launch of a game and how to make it not good. Ironically, it begs the question of how in the world is EA still a company? At least something like Ubisoft, who hasn't made good Assassin's Creeds in years, at least they're kind of knocking on death's door, where they're like kind of close to going out of business. One or two more Assassin's Creed flops, and they're out of business, and people have talked about that in the past. But with EA, it just seems to not be the case. And I'm not going to deny that they don't have good games years after the game came out. So it's like, yeah, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 is fun now, right? Battlefront 2 is fun now, right? And they were even kind of fun when they came out, right? They were even fun when they came out, but I guess the whole gist of it is, maybe it's not what we want, right? And realistically, what's going to happen is the game's going to come out, and it's not going to be good for a year or two, or maybe even 3 years, and people are going to be mad, right? And they're going to shut down support for Battlefront 2, the good Battlefront game, and now people can't go back and play it, and, it's just kind of going to be like, well, damn, right? On top of the other fact that the 2017 Battlefront team just isn't there anymore. Like, I think some people have talked about this, where, the people who made Battlefront 2, who worked at EA and DICE and all those companies, they don't work there anymore, right? They don't work at EA anymore. They don't work at DICE anymore. They are at other game franchises. They're at other game companies. And I've heard some of the people be like, yeah, let's get the band back together and build Battlefront 3 one last time or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but I'm going to be honest, it's not going to be good, right? It's going to be another one of those EA games that comes out and isn't good. And, I mean, EA's been on this historically long bad streak right now. Like, I think they made Dragon Age the Veilguard, not good game. Battlefield 2042, obviously not very good. Plants vs. Zombies Battlefield Neighborville wasn't considered very well. I mean, Apex Legends was good when it came out. Is it considered good now? Of course not. So, there are kind of plenty of questions in the realm of, like, can they do that? But the more important thing, I guess, for me, I don't want them to basically dig up the grave that is these older, dead games just for them to essentially ruin them, and kind of desecrate the grave. Kind of a good example for this, I don't know if it's like the best example, but it's like the best I can come up with on the fly without a script. But one of the things that they do now, or kind of one of the things you've seen popular, is older bands kind of touring around again. So like my dad asked me, we were looking at something like ZZ Top is touring, and we're like, not only are they very old, but one of the guys is dead. And it's like, AC/DC's touring with that guy in those short shorts, and it's like, meh, Watching them 20, 30 years ago when they were younger and they were hip and in is one thing. Watching an 80-year-old guy go around, 80, maybe 70-year-old, whatever. Watching an 80, 70-year-old guy on stage, do all that stuff again and try to relive his youth, it's kind of just sad. He can't hit the notes anymore. He doesn't really remember the song. He's just old, and you just got to hang it up. And the funny thing is that these guys did hang it up years ago. You saw that when they stopped performing, but somebody convinced them somewhere down the line to come back out of retirement and film some more shows. And I don't know why. I mean, I do understand that some people want to see that. Like, I'd love to go to a Metallica concert or whatever, but it's a little late. The people who are there are a little old at this point. So I kind of don't... I want to see Metallica 30, 40 years ago, not 30, 40 years in the future, or dare I say, 70, 80 years old, right? And it's kind of the same thing within this, where it's like, I don't want them to take these good franchises and good series and, dig it up kind of just for some quick cash. If they release Battlefront 3, it would be easy money. People would buy it. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And that's just the problem, right? They would make money from the franchise, and they'd be like, let's do more, and they would just ruin it, right? I can guarantee you, if you ask anybody, they should have stopped 2 or 3 Far Cry's ago and 2 or 3 Assassin's Creeds ago, if not more. And you just don't want to watch the series that you like so much go to shit. You want them to quit while they're ahead. You want them to quit while they're up. And you want it to just be like, yeah, we're done with that, right? It's in the past. We did it in the past. Let's try to make another game. Let's try to make a different game, a different franchise. Or maybe just hand it off to somebody else. I don't think EA is capable of making very good games anymore. A lot of the other bad games that I mentioned, where unfortunately the reality is that EA is not capable. And the funny thing is, like, back in 2017, this was back when they were a, quote, heavy air quotes here, good company, right? And yeah, I do mean heavy air quotes, because even back then they were kind of meh. But then it's like, this came out, Battlefront 2 came out, and people started saying, greediest company ever. And it's kind of stuck with them for good reason, because that's what they are. The $500 heirlooms in Apex Legends, their reputation precedes them for a bad reason. Well, for a good reason, because they really truly are a fairly greedy company. And I don't think that if they brought back Battlefront 3, it would be any different. As a matter of fact, I would almost argue that you'd run into the same problems. One of the things, and I'm not going to be shy about saying this, I think if Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out 2 to 3 years after that, I don't think the gaming community would have been able to bitch them as much into changing and getting rid of all of the microtransactions that were in that game. Seeing how microtransaction heavy the current games are today, seeing how microtransaction heavy the current gaming industry is today, I think just goes to show that if that game had come out today, they probably would have kept it, right? They probably would have kept all the heroes being locked behind loot boxes and paywalls, and all of the star cards and loot boxes and behind paywalls. I don't think that they would have, reverted their initial decision to get rid of them. And another thing is, I don't think that, more importantly, I don't think the consumers, us, the people, would have been as angry. Seeing that people pay like $20 for Fortnite skins now, it's like, I don't think people would have been super off the rails about paying $5 or $10 for a loot box to get a hero, right? I think they would have been fine with it, dare I say. So it's kind of funny how timing is kind of everything, because if they had come out a couple years later, they honestly probably could have just ruined the entire franchise instead of having a decent game now. Realistically, you should just kind of play Star Wars Battlefront 2 now, as it's popular and it's in. How popular is it going to be for, is it going to be popular for like a month or another week or so? I don't know. It's hard to say, but I will say this, it's fun now, right? Even if the game dies like today while I'm making this video, I am entirely okay with that, because it was fun to play. It's a fun game to play. There's no denying that. And even if it goes down to like 1 to 2, maybe 3,000 players on Steam, I do think that it'll be able to retain a relatively small active player base at that point. No, I don't think it's staying at like 18 or 19,000 active players on Steam, but at the same time, if it can stay around 2 to 3,000, I think that for the people who want to play the game, it will be there, and for people who will come back, it can also be there, right? So something like Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 has like 900 players or something on Steam, and yeah, it's not like the best, but if you want to come back and play the game, you can, right? The lobbies, they will be full. Sometimes I've gotten into full lobbies, I've gotten into not full lobbies. So occasionally there are some times when, yeah, it's a little hard to get lobbies in that game. But for the most part, you can definitely get some lobbies. If you want to go and you want to play it and you want to experience it, you can definitely go on and play it. And I really think that that's all a game like this needs to stay at. It does not need to be this big AAA buster game. Well, I wouldn't even say AAA buster because, like, it's a AAA game. It doesn't need to be this huge, AAA success game. It just needs to be relatively popular for the people who want it, right? And there are people out there who like the game. I like the game. Am I going to go back to Overwatch in a week or two? Probably, right? It's fun for now. But the reality of it is you don't want them coming back and ruining it. And more importantly, you don't want them coming back, ruining it, and shutting down Battlefront 2 just so that Battlefront 3 can be very bad, right? Think about Battlefield 2042. When that game came out, they stopped support on Battlefield 5. And people wanted to play Battlefield 5 at the time because it was the latest, in their mind, it was the latest, decent Battlefield game. So kind of to reiterate, I think it's very easy to look at a lot of these games as what they are now. Look at the Battlefields as what they are now, after years of working on them and, releasing these poor shit games and thinking, man, I mean, that's just what we want, right? Yeah, you want Battlefront 2, 8 years later after they finally worked on everything and fixed everything. You don't want it when they released it. And that's exactly what's going to happen. They're going to release the game, they're going to release Battlefront 3, and it's not going to be, it's not going to be good, it's going to be microtransaction hell, or whatever it is, and people are going to be very disappointed. And they're just going to wish that it probably hadn't happened at all, versus even having it in the first place. Now, that's not to say that they can't release a decent Battlefront 3. I do think that it could happen. I do think that, there is a chance that they know what not to make this time, and I do think that there is a chance that they are at least partially aware of what people don't want. But at the same time, it's EA. I mean, they have these huge, massive curveballs that is insane. I mean, they make the Star Wars Jedi Survivor games, and people are like, man, they know what's going on. Those games are pretty good. And then they come out with Star Wars Outlaws, and it's just like, how do the people who made that other game how do the people who came up with that also come up with that other one, right? Now, I do understand that they're not entirely, like, the same companies. I don't know. I know they're all, like, subsidiaries of EA. And I do know, like, because you can buy them all on EA. Or no, I think Star Wars Outlaws is Ubisoft. I might take that back. I might have to take back the whole video. Probably. Yeah, it's a Ubisoft title. Alright, I take it all back. I might have to just skip through those parts of my video so I don't look like an idiot. But you look at certain games that, EA kind of releases, especially like when the Star Wars franchise is like, man, how does somebody who make this also make this? Or more importantly, like, how does somebody who makes FIFA, like those really bad soccer games, and I mean, that's up to debate. I know people like it, people don't. How do people like that come out and are able to make Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2? Amazing game. And then the next one is Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville. And it's just like, man, I mean, how do you mess up so bad? I think I would rather it just not exist. As a matter of fact, I would go as far as to say I don't even want to see them updating Battlefront 2. Because I think if they update Battlefront 2 and they go and add stuff and they do stuff, they're going to want to monetize it. And they're going to want to get their grubby hands in it and, like, fix all of this stuff. I don't know how many people are buying Star Wars Battlefront 2. I don't know how many people owned it prior to the resurgence, right? I bought it, like, 2 weeks ago for $8 when it was on sale for May 4th. But that's me. right? I don't know how much money they're making from this. Because if you're just like on their servers and not buying anything and you already own the game, they're not making any money. So if they come back and they're like, hey, this is very popular and people want us to update it, they're going to be like, let's update it, let's monetize it, let's get all this money out of it. And I don't want that, right? Because then it's like, it's going to turn into this modern microtransaction hell game that I don't want. And I know more accurately, you also don't want. And it's kind of one of the refreshing things about some of these older games is that they kind of don't have microtransactions in them to an extent, right? So you go back and you play, Garden Warfare 2. Yeah, it has microtransactions. Yeah, it has pretty bad microtransactions where everything's like in the packs and stuff. But it's not as egregious as something like Call of Duty or even like something like Overwatch or whatever, where, yeah, it's got microtransactions, but it is definitely a different form of it. I don't know if I'd say it's more acceptable, but it is up to you. It's like I recently went back to playing Black Ops 3 a little bit. It is just mind-boggling how much is actually in that game in the sense of microtransactions. What you get if you just buy the game straight up is laughably nothing. In the zombie side of things, you miss out on arguably some of the best zombies maps. And it's not to say that Shadows of Evil that releases with the game is bad, but you miss out on Go Rod Crovey. You miss out on, was it Shangri-La, I think? No, whatever. You miss out on, so if you buy Black Ops 3 and you don't buy anything else, you don't buy the Season Pass, you don't buy any of that stuff, you only get Shadows of Evil. You miss out on Kino, or I'm sorry, not Kino, you miss out, well, you kind of do, but not really, you know what I mean? We'll talk about that in a second, but you miss out on Der Eisendrache. You miss out on Go Rod Crovey. You miss out on Revelations, which are arguably some of the best zombies maps, and that is up for debate. But you also miss out on all the Chronicles maps as well. You miss out on Origins. You miss out on Kino der Toten. You miss out on Nocturne Toten. And I know that now, at this point, you cannot buy Black Ops 3 without buying the Zombies Chronicles. But you can buy it without the Season Pass, so you can buy it without Go Rod Crovey and Revelations and all that stuff. And to be fair, Call of Duty has always had a very bad monetization strategy. And I don't mean bad, I mean very good, where they'll make a lot of money, but it was ridiculous. I mean, Black Ops 2, if you didn't buy the Season Passes, you would miss out on arguably some of the best zombies maps ever. If you just bought the base game, you got Transit, the worst zombies map ever. But if you bought the Season Pass, you got Origins, you got Mob of the Dead, you got Buried, and you got Diarise. Now, there is a conversation for Buried and Diarise, but there's really not a conversation for Origins and Mob of the Dead. Those are generally considered some of the better Call of Duties, or Call of Duty Zombies maps. And with Black Ops 3 specifically, the loot box system is so egregiously horrible and money-grubbing that, I don't know if you know this, there's actually more weapons in the supply drop system than there are in the actual base game, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It is insane. And to be fair, Battlefront 2 was like that at a time where it was very microtransaction grubby, and it's not like that anymore. And I think that's great, and I think that's amazing, but it's important to say that if they came out with Battlefront 3, that wouldn't be the case. They would try to monetize it, maybe not in the same way, but they would still try to monetize it. It would still be a horrible mess. It would still be dumb. It would still be dumb, and that's the main thing. That's the main thing is, like, I don't want them to, be like, oh, we're going to bring back Battlefront 3, and we're going to start working on it, and it's just going to be a bad thing. Because I know it's going to be a bad thing. I know that. I know that. You know that. And they're just going to waste my time. They're going to waste my money, and it's going to be annoying. Right? It's going to be annoying because it's just going to be ridiculous. It's going to be a whole mess. And that's the thing. I do enjoy giving companies, people, benefit of the doubt. I don't believe that they're all inherently bad or money grubbing or whatever. But at the same time, how much more do you need to see the examples until you just kind of stop doing it? I understand it's cool. It's a funny little trend to, like, you got the horse the guy on the horse with like the lantern or whatever, and that's funny and that's cool and whatever. But more importantly, we know what EA is gonna do. We know what we know what EA is gonna do. We know what DICE is gonna do. We know what they're capable of doing. We know what they're not capable of doing. One of the things is making a good game, and it's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate. It sucks, but that's the reality. And I don't want them to go down the path, because I know if they did it, if they released a Battlefront 3, I know I'd buy it. And I know I'd be disappointed, because I know that's just how EA works. I know they're not going to make a good game, but it sucks. And the biggest thing that sucks is that, the Battlefront IP and, the Battlefront stuff is stuck in EA. It's stuck behind this company that, unfortunately or fortunately for the best, is kind of a shit company who can't make a good game anymore.